All right, so we had a chance to talk some Combine. Jason Stiles in for Groz, and we actually talked a lot of Combine today. In fact, we talked with Eric Williams from the Tacoma News Tribune. You can find the podcast of that interview on the podcast page. But we talked about specifics, Seahawks needs. We all talked defense, but there were some receivers out there that he brought up that might be of interest to the Seahawks.
Yeah, we know that Pete Carroll and Darrell Bevell, they want to get some speed. They want to add another layer to that offense so they can really stretch the field. We saw a lot of big 40 times, Bob. Tavon Austin, sub-4, 340, people enamored with this guy. Might be a little bit small, though. We know they like the long guys that can go up and get the ball. Tavon Austin probably a little more like a Darren Sproles, potentially a Percy Harvin. The guy that I think to keep an eye on, though, is Justin Hunter. He's a guy out of Tennessee. Kippy Brown, the Seahawks receivers coach, knew of him, actually recruited him to Tennessee prior to the Lane Kiffin era. Big guy, 6'4", just about 200 pounds, can really stretch the field, go up and get it. So he might be a guy that they can get in that 25 spot, maybe even fall back to the later rounds. But definitely some speed on the board this year at the wide receiver position. They've got some length that they have, and they're trying to work through some of those names right now. But some guys very, very that have a lot of interest with the Seahawks.
And another thing that Eric brought up is the potential to add to the depth of the secondary, that there might be some guys out there, depending on how the draft falls. You never know who's going to be available at 25, but if you go best player on the board, and they definitely have a need as far as somebody that can play the nickel. So a couple of interesting names there as well.
Yeah, and I think you also have to understand that there's going to be a time where we're not going to be able to re-sign all these guys that are back there. And so you've got to fill in the gaps where you can. Could you need another corner? Do you need a kind of hybrid guy that can play safety and drop down to linebacker like a Kasim Green from Rutgers? You also got Jordan Poyer. I mean, for a Pac-12 guy, you're going to know this guy because he's always around the ball, a former Oregon State Beaver, ball hawk, big on interceptions, physical guy.
That's a guy you like a lot. As soon as he mentioned his name, I like that guy.
Like him. And if you want a guy that can play in space in the middle of the field to complement Browner and Sherman, I think there's a big name in Jordan Poyer that you can look at there. Guy not lacking in confidence either. Models his games after Cortland Finnegan, who very aggressive, talkative guy, if you will, Bob.
Fit right in with Sherman.
Yeah, absolutely. They need that guy. So some good options there. Did they go linebacker, safety? Did they go corner? Some good depth in that draft this year.
Well, no, and I think that's a great point, that at some point in time, these guys are all going to need to be re-signed, and maybe there's going to be one you're going to have to make a tough decision on. So it's good to kind of stock the cupboard, if you will. If you know, the Walter Thurmans aren't going to make it, we don't know if he's ever going to be able to be healthy. Right. Obviously, you've got a need where Marcus Trufant, you expect is no longer going to be there. You got to address that. And you know, Brandon Browner is a little older. He's not a young guy. He's young to this team. Just getting done with his second season, but he's an older player, so you don't know how long he's going to be there either. So right. I think a move like that, you know, when you're in that kind of 25 area where maybe you're not going to get the ideal pass rusher, but best guy on the board is a cornerback, I think could be a great move for this team.
Well, and you look at the depth that they have with 10 picks, and who knows if they're going to be able to trade Matt Flynn for even more picks. A lot of guys in the middle round. If there aren't guys that just jump out at you in that first round, they're going to be able to get multiple players because at some point rent's going to come due on Sherman, on Earl Thomas, on Cam Chancellor, on the Bobby Wagners of the world. They're going to have enough money to spread around the entire team and not just the secondary of that defense. While we would like to keep everybody as Seahawk fans, you've got to start building that depth to determine who potentially could take their spot.
Well, 25th seems like a good spot to kind of just go best player on the board. No specific position in mind, but if it's cornerback, so be it.